Hi, I'm Julie. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you to Diane for asking me, and whoever asked Diane. I can see when God is working in my life today, and I've learned to say yes and not talk about my way, what I had planned, which was something else. But I'm so grateful to be here. I was just looking where it says, cast all your anxiety upon him because he cares for you. And that's so much of what I've gotten in 12-step programs in AA. And this program is from a person who is very much not religious and wasn't raised with organized religion, maybe some fake, but not really. That's what I've found is a relationship with my own higher power. And I believe that is what has helped me to stay sober. And I don't think anything else could have. 10 minutes is hard for me, but I'm going to do my best. So if I'm not sober by then, sorry. But I got sober at 19. I started trying at 17. I probably should have tried a couple years earlier. It was suggested to me. This was in the 80s, and in my family, we were like allowed to drink and use. We were allowed to use, like we could use Coke, but we couldn't use it in certain ways. We could use it in other ways. And I grew up in the Valley, and that was like pretty much what the people around us, like not most of my friends, but some of their parents. My parents were hippies, and they were basically children. And had two brothers and sisters, and there was just a lot of confusion around drinking and using. Was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? And it was only a bad thing, apparently, when you get in trouble, and then when you shine the spotlight on them. So I learned that pretty quick, and I see that you guys, I think you're from a recovery house. That's awesome. And I just remember feeling like so bad, but also now looking back thinking, those were some good times. Like those were way better than the times when I was out on the streets using. Those were way better than the times when I was trying to control and manage, or on another, like, it was just good, and I just couldn't see it. But I eventually stayed, and I eventually stayed sober, and I got my life back. Like we're a strange lot. We will trade everything in life for a drink or to get high. And that's literally what it cost me, was everything. And when I got here and I went to 12-step with some hope, thinking, good, they're going to tell me how to stop getting arrested and stop overdosing and stop having my family disown me and stop losing friends and getting all the things that we get. We get in fights, we get assaulted, like we assault others. But that's not. You guys are like, yeah, we don't drink and use no matter what. Oh my God, fuck no, I'm not doing that. That sounds like the worst. Like I literally took everything in me not to leave, and the only reason I didn't is because a friend of my dad's took me there, and there was like a criteria. Because I was like, you guys are crazy, you're all lying. I don't know how you're so happy about that you can't drink ever again or use drugs. Like I was like, my head was exploding. And I mean, I get it today. I think what I really wanted, and they got it too, luckily, they said, keep experimenting. See if you can manage and control it. And I was like, cool, thanks, bye, I'll go do that. And I tried my hardest. I tried so hard. In fact, my dad was smuggling a lot of cocaine into the state and the country. And I didn't know. All I knew is there's a lot that I could take, right? And yeah. I thought for 2 years going in and out of the program, getting into more and more trouble, paying a higher and higher price, that if I only had enough, if I had enough money like my parents did, and I had enough drugs or enough alcohol, that I could do this successfully. And that was, in my mind, the issue was getting in trouble and paying consequences. The issue was not using. There was nothing wrong with that in my mind. But the longer I stayed at meetings, even when I wasn't completely sober and I showed up, and you guys were so nice to me, you were like, I was like, I drink, or I'm on heroin. They're like, we know. Just stay. We love you anyway. Just don't share like that. And I was like, okay. And I started finding myself wanting to be here. And I started finding myself drawn to you guys and not the people that were out there with me, because they were not with me for the right reasons either. And even my old good friends who I didn't use with before I started drinking and using, which you'd have to go way back, they didn't want to be around me because I was the one that always too much, can't handle it, always getting us kicked out, always getting us in a fight. So I felt like I had nobody but you guys. Thank you. I appreciate that. Eventually, after I think it was like 7 rehabs, 2 mental hospitals, a recovery house twice, and then another one once, I finally was ready to surrender. I had taken a kilo of cocaine from my dad. There was 5. I took 1. I felt like I was proud of myself for showing restraint. My story's hard to believe, but it's in the newspapers. Like you could, there's proof. I'm not making it up. You can't make it up. So, I wound up within a week almost dead and completely psychotic, pulling bugs out of my skin that weren't there and trying to jump out of a window. I overdosed, obviously, and I wound up back in AA, and my ass was finally kicked. And I stayed in the recovery house, and I once again felt that craving, that thought that I should use, and instead of doing it, I took advice from AA. I got on my knees, and I said the 3rd step prayer. I think it's here. Well, it's usually in meeting rooms, so you can find it in the book. God, that I offer myself to thee, and please take away my obsession. And I knew it wasn't going to work, but I did it anyway in front of a mirror in the recovery room bathroom. And I didn't drink that day. I didn't go downtown and get loaded. I didn't do what my disease was telling me to do. And for the first time, I woke up sober the next day, and I was like, oh my God, I don't have to do this. I don't have to pick up. I don't have to die. As you guys told me, that's where I was going, and I believed you. Everybody knew that's where I was going. So from that day, I've been willing to go to any length to stay sober, to keep my sobriety. I don't ever want another sobriety date. My sobriety date is October 4th, 1986. And life has not been perfect, but it's been awesome. I have so many gifts. I'm a college graduate. I have a couple degrees. I have a family. I have a daughter. I've been married a long time. Like, I'm active in meetings. I help people. Yeah, I don't know how you get from there to where I am now, except working the steps and doing what they tell you to do here. I'm super grateful. My dad wound up going to prison about 3 years into my sobriety, and I was sober, so I got to be guardian of my brother, who at the time was 15. My dad wound up not doing 20 years and getting out because of AA within like 5 or 6, and he lived a long, sober life, and we lost him a couple years ago. So now I can stay sober when somebody who's close to me passes. That hasn't been easy, but it's been a gift that because of the program, I could be there for him. And I could not have regrets because I wanted to be angry and hold on to resentment and hate him for my childhood. And that's also stupid because he was sober a long time, 30-something years. But that's like how my disease can still work today when I'm sober. Oh, thank you. I'm grateful for the chance to stand up here and tell you guys this because I haven't spoken a long time. It helps me take inventory and feel the gratitude that, like, I'm not out there dying from drugs and alcohol, no matter what else is going on. And my life is such a gift. Every moment that I'm sober is a gift. And my sponsor, Diane, is going to come up here and speak, and she has so much wisdom. And I think my time is over. Thank you for letting me be of service.
All right, y'all. Welcome back. I'm going to start us off with the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. All right. Now our main speaker will share her experience, strength, and hope with us. Please join me in the welcoming of Diane K. from South Bay.
And they put a little something down here for me. So now you can see me. I don't know why they make these things so tall. Anyway, even at Torrance Memorial, where I usually go on Saturday night because I have a commitment, but this is where I started. Diane, alcoholic. Diane. This is where I started. I came here. I used to greet at the door. The meeting was huge. And I loved it because there were lots of guys. And, and I wanted to be validated. So, and this is where I got to be a little popular, But anyway, I used to fix the food. I used to wash ashtrays. I used to help clean. And that's what I was told to do, is to be of service. So anyway, what it was like and what it's like now. And I can tell you it's very different. When I came into these rooms, I was really, really scared. I didn't know what the steps were, the traditions. I didn't understand the lingo. I was very confused. I wanted to run from here. Can I turn this down? Actually, I don't need. It's kind of in. Thank you. You can shut it off if you want. Oh, thank you. And I used to. I always sat in the front because I wanted to see. And back there, I could not see. Everybody's heads were in my way. But I walked in here, and people were giving me hugs. They were telling me it was going to be okay. I remember, and I will tell you a little bit about my past, but I'm just thinking about this is when I first came in because it's where I started. And I remember, I think it was here or it was either at Torrance Memorial, I can't remember. It was a big meeting, and I was probably a few months sober, and all I did was cry. I didn't know what I was crying for. I just cried. And everything made me emotional. It was like a roller coaster for me. And I remember being in the back of the room, and the speaker was sharing, and all I could do was cry. I was feeling all these feelings I didn't know what to do with. And this woman put her arms around me, and I just sobbed. And it was just an amazing thing just to have someone be there for me. And then I asked her for her phone number, and I asked her for her address, and I sent her flowers of thank you, because I thought I had to thank you. I didn't know this was for free, that we just give it away, and that we're here for each other, and we want to support you, and we want you to be sober, and we care about you. We care about the newcomers, and welcome. I hope you stay. I had a friend, I called one day, and I said to her, I was talking to her, and I had a DUI, and I was here for a meeting. And after that, I was talking to her, and she said, I said something about one day at a time, and she goes, "Are you going to AA meetings?" And I said, "Yeah, how did you know?" She said, "Because you said one day at a time. You don't talk like that." And that woman, and then I said, "Yeah, but I don't know that I'll go back. I don't think it's for me." And she said, "Well, let me call you back. I'm going to see if somebody can take you to a meeting." So she called me back, and a guy friend of hers took me to a meeting, and it was the Gong Show on Friday night. And people were laughing, and they were young. And I thought, well, maybe this isn't so bad. And that same woman that got me here, that helped me to stay here, died. She died from alcoholism. She was 42, and she was my friend. She was my roommate. We drank together. We used together. She went to jail for warrants. And it was really hard to hear that she died. And that's what this disease does. She couldn't get sober. I saw her in a meeting, and she came up to me. She goes, "Why you? Why do you get to stay sober and I don't?" I didn't know how to answer that. I don't know why. I wish there was a secret, and the only thing I know is I just kept coming back. And by the grace of God, my birthday, my sober birthday, is June 24th, 1987, and I get to have 37 years of sobriety, one day at a time. One day. And I have to tell you that sobriety has its ups and downs. I came here and I thought it was going to be wonderful, that it was always going to be wonderful if I just stayed sober. Well, that isn't life. It just isn't. We're going to have good days, we're going to have bad days, we're going to cry, we're going to be sad, we're going to be hurt, we're going to hurt each other. We're going to feel good, we're not going to feel good. We're going to want to walk out, we want to leave, all those feelings. But they're feelings, they're not facts. And I'm sure you've heard that. Feelings come and go. I used to think my feelings were correct, that whatever I felt, I had to act on. And I did. I had big, big feelings when I got here. And I made a lot of mistakes. And I wanted to leave many, many times. But I don't know why I stayed. I don't know. It was the people that kept putting their arms around me. It was the people that came and spoke to me. It was my sponsor that I got that would listen to me over and over and over again about stuff that I would just whine about. But I needed to whine. I needed it. I needed her. Well, and to go back, I want to just give you a little background of where I come from, and then I'll continue on with that, is that I'm from New Jersey. That's where I was born and raised, and then I left Jersey when I was 8 years old. But before that, I lived with my grandparents. My mom got pregnant with me when she was 16. I never knew my father, and she really wasn't equipped to be a mom. And my grandmother, who actually was the one that took care of me, she had 11 children. And she actually had more than that, but a couple had died, some from accidents, some from childbirth. But here was a woman, I think she was a saint. And I'm so glad that I got to be with her. She was not an alcoholic. She was more, today would be an Al-Anon. My grandfather was the alcoholic. He was a rager. He threw things. He called names. He was terrible to my grandmother. And she would just joke around and make fun of things. I don't know how she lived like that. I don't know how she took it all those years. But what she gave me was unconditional love. And then then I got hit by a car when I was 6 years old. And my aunt took care of me, got me around in a baby carriage. I was very small still, and I was embarrassed. And then growing up in Jersey City, New Jersey, it's a very tough place to grow up. There was a lot of gang wars. It was between the Puerto Ricans and the whites. And that's what was going on then when I was growing up. And I remember things flying in the windows. I remember people dying. And I had to learn how to fight, because if you don't, you get beat up. And I was never a good fighter, because when I hurt someone, I was saying I was sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. And, and I just wasn't good at that, thank God. But I did learn how to fight, and I did my best. But I learned how to look tough. Even though I couldn't fight, I learned how to look tough. And at least people thought, I was going to be able to hurt, but I don't know how. But the thing is that I took that into my adult life too, is that I learned how to have many different faces, and we call it a false self. I'd walk in, and if whatever the mask required, if everybody was happy, I would act happy. If people were sad, I would, try to be where they are. If people looked intelligent, I try to sound intelligent. I wanted to be whatever you were. I just wanted to fit. And because I never did. I never felt a part of. I never felt like I was good enough. I was mostly filled with shame when I came here, and I'll tell you more about that. But I left Jersey and I went with my parents, and I had a stepfather, and he was in the military. So we lived on a military base, and I learned about the rules. If you just follow the rules, you'll be okay. So now I know you follow rules. And if I know what the rules are, I know what to do. And that's what I like about AA. I know what the rules are. I know what the traditions are. I know what the steps are. I just got to follow those if I want to stay sober. So I grew up with this man that I didn't know, and my mom, who I'd never really connected with because she hadn't been around for 8 years. So here I was with a new family. I had 2 brothers, and we were in Georgia, and learned how to do what I was told, and if I was a good girl, everything would be okay. If I acted out, it wasn't okay. I got punished. My dad was and I call him my dad because I grew up with him since I was 8. So he was very strict. The military, you do what you're told, or there's some forms of punishment. My dad never hit me. He never did that. But he had a way about, he would just look at you and you better just either do what he says or you're going to hear something from him. And he would come up in front of you, and it was just him looking down at you was so intimidating and scary. And I never really connected with him because most of the time I was afraid of him. He didn't do anything to harm me, but it was just his presence. My mom and my dad both drank. And when they drank, they fought. And it's kind of similar to what I grew up with. With my family, we drank, we fought, and then we got back together again, And when they fought, some of them fist fought. Like I remember being in a bar at my Uncle Charlie's bar, and my aunt overheard this couple fighting, and the guy was getting physical with this woman, and my aunt went up and said, "Could you please take that outside?" And the woman started, even though she's trying to protect the woman started saying things to my aunt, and next thing I know, they're in a fist fight. And that's what I grew up around. But what it did for me is I learned how to be really independent. I learned how to act as if, and I learned how to make it no matter where I was at. I looked as if I knew what I was doing, and yet I was scared most of the time. And underneath, I never thought I was good enough. So I had left. I was in Pennsylvania. We moved to Pennsylvania. We went from Georgia to Virginia, then Pennsylvania, and I grew up there. And that was probably the best upbringing I had there. I had good schooling, but at 21, I decided to leave. I went to a junior college before that, and then I got a couple friends, and we moved to Florida. And there in Florida, both of my friends met these guys, and they were leaving, and I had no one. And I was out at a bar one night, and this 6'4" guy came and asked me to dance, and I wound up with him. And I wound up marrying this guy. And this guy was very abusive. And this is not a part of my story that I like, because I didn't know how to leave, and I was scared all the time. He was very intimidating, and when I did try to leave, he was always finding a way to keep me there, or he'd come to my work. He was physical, mentally, physically, spiritually damaging to me. And I was with him for 5 years, and the only way I got away from him was he was at work one day, and I called some friends in Florida that lived, I'm trying to remember where it was, Orlando. And I called them and asked them if I can come and stay with them. And so I packed my bags, left a note, and I never went back to him again. And he tried to find me, and he called my mom. My mom hated him, hated that I was marrying him. And so she never told him where I was. And I'm really glad, because there was a couple times I did go back before I left, because I was always intimidated. And I thought he was going to find me anyway, or he was going to find a way to get me back. And so people were tired of me. They were tired of me going back and forth, and I lost friends because they didn't know what to do with me. It's just like the alcoholic. We lose friends because they're tired that, we keep drinking and we don't stop. And why are we doing this to ourselves? Why are we doing this to everybody else? Same thing. Anyway, I left him, and then and I was in Florida for a while, and I met this wonderful guy who loved me. And we wound up being together, and we moved out here to California. And this is where I did probably most of my drinking. And I drank in Florida, had a lot of fun drinking for a long time. I had a great group of friends. We partied together. It was what I knew. It's what I grew up with. It was okay to drink. It's okay to get drunk sometimes. It's okay. But when I was drinking out here, I remember one day I was with this guy after his name was Bruce, and after I left Bruce because he was just too good for me, and he loved me too much, and I got bored with him. And so I met this other guy, and he was also a great guy. And, with him, I started using, it's just part of my story, but alcohol is my drug of choice. But I loved cocaine too. I liked that it kept me awake and I can drink more. But I was with this guy for a while, and I didn't know how to do relationships. And I remember that one night we were out drinking at the Red Onion, and we had been drinking a lot, and we're driving home, and we got in an argument, and he skid. It was raining that night, and he broke his neck. We were in an accident. And then he went into the hospital, and he recovered, but we didn't really recover after that. And then, even before that, when he recovered from his accident, his parents came to visit on Christmas. And I'm not really, I'm pretty ashamed of this, was ashamed of this as well, is that they were there at the house, and I had been at a friend's house, and I was drinking, and I was using. And I came to the house, and they were already there, and he just looked at me, and they looked at me, and I was drunk. And I went into the room, and he just was so pissed off at me. And so I just left. I just left, and this was Christmas Eve. And I went back over to my friends, and I continued to use and drink. And I came back the next day, and nobody was there at the house. And that's when it all came back to me, and it didn't feel so good. What I hated about drinking was that when people told me what I did and what I said, that's what I hated. And all that remorse and all that shame, would just come running back. And I would say to myself, you know what, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink. I'm gonna wait until after the holidays, and I'm gonna stop. And I'm sure all of us have done this. I promised myself, and I would stop for a week, for two, and then there was a party, or then it was Christmas, or then it was this. And then I'd forget that I made that promise to myself. And then I drank some more, and I drank again. And then the remorse, and then the shame. And wishing I could be different. Why can't I be different? Why can't I stop? And then I got a DUI again, my second DUI. And I'm in jail this time. The first time they didn't do that. This time they did. And it was only overnight, but it was so humiliating. And here my dad that was an alcoholic who died from this disease, by the way, he was a cop. And the cops covered for him. He drank while he was on duty. Here I thought about, oh my God, if my dad could see me now, see me here in jail, he would be ashamed of me. And then I remember calling my friend Bruce, the guy that was really nice that we drove out here together. He was still my buddy. And I asked him if he could pick me up the next day. He was very codependent. And he came and picked me up and took me home. And there was all the shame and the humiliation, and I told myself I wouldn't drink. I'm going to stop. And then, 2 weeks later, I'm drinking again. I didn't know how to stop. And then I remember one day, I came home one night, one more time, not feeling good. And by the way, I would go into bars, and when I was meeting with my friends and hanging out, if I got validation and someone asked me out, then I was okay, that I was pretty enough and good enough. And if I went to the bars, and if no one asked me out, or no one flirted with me, I was a piece of shit. I was nobody. I wasn't good looking. I wasn't good enough. It's amazing how my self-esteem was based on your opinion of me and what you thought of me, and if you asked me out. That's what my self-esteem depended upon, what you thought of me. And so I came into these rooms after that second DUI, but I was at my kitchen table right before that night, and I prayed again to God. And I said, God, please help me. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know what made this night different, but I meant it. And the next morning I woke up and I called AA, even though I had been to AA for 2 DUIs and meetings and all that, but I didn't belong here because I wasn't like you. I didn't lose everything. I still had a job. I still had a car. I had everything. Financially, I was okay. Materially, I was okay. But inside, I was broken, and I was wounded, and I was shamed. And so some women came up, they came to pick me up. I was sober, and they were late, and I thought I could have driven there. You know, I was pissed off that they were late. I'm waiting. Where are they? And so they come and pick me up, and they took me to a meeting called Trudgers. And that meeting, all I did was cry, but I related for the first time. I was listening. I was hearing you. And I felt all that you felt. And all of a sudden, I felt like I belonged. I didn't when I was here for meetings from DUIs. I didn't belong. I was finding all the differences, and I wasn't like you. This time, I knew I was like you. I knew it in my heart, in my soul. I knew I had to be here. And so I went to that meeting, and they took me out for fellowship afterwards, and they spoke to me, and they shared their experience, strength, and hope with me. And I was so grateful that I found these meetings. And I was grateful that someone cared. And I was grateful that, you know, I was sober at least 2 days then. It's like I hadn't drank in 2 days. And yet part of me still wanted to be with my friends. And I had a big group of friends that did exactly what I did. We all had good jobs. We worked for aerospace. They drank like I did. They used like I did. And I didn't want to give them up. So I continued to go to AA, and I don't recommend this. I continued to go to AA, and I went out to bars and tried to be with these friends. And I went to the parties, but I was miserable. Because when they started slurring their words and smelled like alcohol, and I couldn't relate, and I hated them for it, like they're having a good time and I'm miserable. And so eventually, I got sick and tired of doing what I was doing. And I made that decision to put both feet in AA. That I could no longer have 1 foot there and 1 foot here. I couldn't do it. And I had to give up those group of friends. And so that was when my sobriety changed. And I asked a woman to be my sponsor. I was at a get-together, and she was an amazing woman. And I don't know, I looked at her and I watched her and I thought, I want her to be my sponsor. She was an older woman. Her name was Patty. And she turned around and she said, yes, of course. And I was with her for 17 years, and she died of cancer. And it was devastating to me. And it's still, I miss her to this day. It was a woman that unconditionally loved me. She would listen to me, and she would say, Diane, it's going to be okay. And tell me what to do. Go to a meeting. I'm glad you called. I'm here for you. And then, you know, it took me through the steps. And then I joined this group that was doing the steps, and we did the steps for 2 years. It was with a group of women. There was 20 women that started, and there was 10 that ended. Because when it got to the 4th step, a lot of people left. And it's unfortunate because, yes, the 4th step is about looking at yourself. But we're already carrying all this stuff anyway. We're already feeling it. And so we get afraid. You know, and we start thinking ahead, you know, we're going to have to make these amends, and, you know, we're way ahead of ourselves. We need to stay where we're right at. It's, you know, in the 4th step. But even before that, when I came to AA, I had to understand powerlessness because I didn't grow up with like that. I grew up, you know, you go after what you want, you get what you want by working hard, by making it work. Self-sufficiency, that's what I knew. I knew how to take care of myself. And, you know, and I grew up with hard workers. They were iron workers back east. I grew up with blue collar. We work hard, we work long hours, and that's how we make our living. And we earn it. You don't get it for free. You earn it. And so when I got here, It's like I wanted to earn it. I wanted to earn sobriety. But it's not even that either. It's by grace. It's not about earning anything. I still had that, I'm going to make this work. But when I started doing these steps with these women, and I do recommend women go to women's meetings and not just go to mixed meetings. It's important to have that camaraderie, to have those women back you up, know you, cover, be there for you. There's nothing like it. Same thing for the men. I don't agree with having a male sponsor when you're a female, but I know people do, and that's okay. It's just not my opinion. And the same for men. But I need to know women understand me. So I had this woman who was amazing, amazing. And to this day, I thank her. Because I had good sobriety, and when I did these steps with these women, my life changed. I understood powerlessness. I understood that my life was unmanageable. Why was it unmanageable? What was the things that made it unmanageable? Well, it was the way I drank and used. It was the way I used people. It was the way I had a false self. I was putting on a mask. You didn't know who I was. It's just so anything I could fit in, make and look good. Oh, I had to look good. I didn't want you to see any of these insecurities that I had, and had tons of them. And I didn't think I did. I didn't think I was afraid when I got here. Then I found out I was afraid of everything. When you're raw and you don't have alcohol and drugs to use, all of a sudden you're afraid. And I didn't know how to walk through that fear without these women, without going through the steps. So I realized I was powerless. And then I had to believe that there was something bigger than me. Whatever you believe in, as long as it's not you, because you didn't do such a great job. And so if you think you can do this on self-sufficiency, try it, but I don't think it works. Didn't work for me. And when I came to believe in a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, to restore me to sane thinking, I didn't realize that I had insane thinking, that I believed in my thinking, that whatever my thinking was, I was right. And I had to convince you I was right. And I was still doing that in AA. Even in the beginning, my opinion was right. And I was going to do it my way. So came to believe in a power greater than myself. And it's like, okay, even though I grew up going to church, I did believe in God. But I still thought God does for me after I do what I need to do. Then I need your help. And so then I came to the third step, turn my life and my will over to the care of God as I understand him. Wow. Well, if I turn my life and my will, I'll be a non-entity like it talks about in the big book. I didn't want to be a non-entity. I was so afraid that God was going to make me something I didn't want to be. I thought I wanted to keep my personality, and I wanted to be funny, and I wanted this, and I wanted that. Well, God's going to make me something I don't even know what I'll be. And then, by talking to a woman, and I didn't get to do the third step with everybody else in the group because I wasn't ready to turn my life and my care over to God. And so I had to really pray on that. And then I realized, why would God want to change me to anything better, except better than what I am? To improve upon and make my life better. And I thought, wow, I had this all wrong. Is that my life is going to God's going to take care of those things that I don't like. God's going to help me with those insecurities. God's going to help me with those fears. So if I turn my life and my will over to something bigger than me, and I call it God, but whatever your God is fine. But that's my God. And so I did. I sat with someone, a friend, and I prayed, and I turned my life and my will over to the care of God. Now, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what God was going to do, but I was just going to do it anyway. I'm that desperate. So then we embarked upon the fourth step, and going through the fourth step, I was scared. I was afraid to look at myself because I didn't like to be criticized. I was so afraid of anyone critical of me or saying anything about me. So I wanted to be a step ahead of you and try to figure out what was going wrong with me and tell you, oh yeah, I do know. I know that, I overspoke, or I'm sorry I did that, and so that if I was ahead of you, then you couldn't criticize me. I already knew it. And so that was a way that I could keep myself safe. But through the years, I've learned how to do that differently. And that's amazing to me because it's being vulnerable to have someone tell me something I don't want to hear. So doing the 4-step, thinking about way ahead, I started writing out all my resentments, and I was looking at you. My resentments were what I want you to do for me, how I want you to be. That's my resentment. You're not doing life the way I want it, so I don't like you. And so all those resentments I wrote out because life wasn't going the way I wanted. And then I had to do the other part of that. Where was I selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and afraid? Who did I harm? And that's the part, looking at the honesty, the vulnerability, seeing what I did to people, seeing what I did to myself. I forgot about me, too. How I harmed me. How I didn't look at myself as someone that was worthy. I didn't look at that, I deserved to be loved by God. I deserved to have people like me. I didn't think I was worthy of that when I came in here. So just having to look at, where I harm myself too, because we forget about that. But how did I harm others with my selfishness, my self-seeking? A lot of what I did was distancing from you, throwing you away. You didn't do it my way, I'm not talking to you. I did that silent scorn. I hurt people with my mouth, saying things without thinking. Criticizing, which I didn't like when you criticized me, but I could criticize you. I could find fault in you. So looking at all the harms I did, looking at where I was selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and I was dishonest in many ways, non-verbally too. I didn't, I would get away with, just not saying anything, but showing it on my face, or not looking at you, or avoiding you. Those are the things I did. Thinking, no, they don't know. Oh, yes, you do. You can tell. And so I needed to look at that too. And then looking at my character defects, 6 and 7. And I had lots of them. And I thought I was the only one that had lots of them. I thought all this list and a big list of defects. And I thought, oh my God, I'm an awful person. But then I found out from my sponsor that she had a lot of those defects. So I wasn't. And I heard it in meetings, people having defects of character, that I'm not alone, that we all have them. And so that made me feel a little bit better. And then having to do step 7, I thought that all of my defects would be removed. I was waiting, and I said the prayer, the 7-step prayer, and I thought, wow, this is great. They're going to be removed. And none of them were removed. I was still doing the same behavior. But what happened over time is that by the grace of God, that I would find I'm not doing something again, or I'm catching it. Oh, I'm not talking to somebody, and I'm avoiding. I have to stop that. I have to tell them, I'm sorry, I've been avoiding you. And why I'm avoiding you is because I felt, and I know, and go on. But it was mostly about what I was doing. I'm avoiding you. I apologize. I'm sorry. That is not a behavior I want. And if there's anything else that I harmed you with, please let me know. That was in my 9th step, but I would also do that when I did a 10-step. But anyway, going back to 6 and 7, the character defects, asking God to remove them, and then finding over time that I was doing things different without even realizing it. That's the miracle. So then I came to the 8th step, and of course this part I don't like. I had to write down the people that I needed to make amends to. And my biggest amends, one of my amends, was to my ex-husband, but at the time was my husband. And, you know, when you live with someone, you have to make amends all the time. But I had a lot of amends to make to him. And so, and I had to sit there, no matter what he did, I had to just talk about what I did. And that's what I've learned here. And I wrote out in cards what my amends were. And I also prioritized the tough ones, the ones I don't want to make, and the ones that were easy. And I started out with the easy ones so I would get comfortable. And then I started to work on the ones that were hard. And then I worked on the ones that I didn't want to do. And so I got through those amends, and then 10, 11, and 12. And the 10th step is an amazing step. Because now that I've worked through all these steps, and I've made my amends, and I've had to make amends, I made amends to my dad who had passed away. And I went to church, and there was no one there. It was an early evening, and I had written a letter. And that's what you can do to people that you can't contact or past. You can write a letter and that's how you make your amends, and you share your letter to them, even though they're not here. And so I did that, and I felt clean afterwards. And so I also brought a bunch of stuff that I stole from Hughes Aircraft. It was, I left and I took my office supplies with me that I thought they didn't need, you know, and I hung on to those for years. And it was bugging me. And so I finally had to pack them up, took them to the Hughes Aircraft, went inside, and the guard said, I don't know what to do with these. And I said, I don't care. Take them. And I ran out of there. And I felt so happy and so clean. It was like, oh my God, I gave it back. It's no longer in my head. I don't feel guilty. I don't feel ashamed. And so the 10th step is ongoing, and I continue to make a 10 step, and I continue to make amends. I wish that I could say that I write out my amends. A lot of times I make amends immediately because I know now when I've harmed someone. It comes to me right away. And I cannot let it sit. I've got to call you. I got to meet with you, whatever it takes. And the 11th step is amazing. Prayer and meditation. And I learned how to meditate by sitting with a guru early on in sobriety. I used to go to this place and we'd sit with a guru and I would try to meditate for an hour or more. And I did that for a while. I was seeking. I was trying to find my way. But it helped me to meditate and learn how to meditate and be quiet. And I don't meditate for an hour anymore. I meditate for probably 10, 15 minutes. I pray. And I and with my prayers, I ask God for what His will is for me today. And I thank God morning and night for my sobriety. And I also thank Him for everyone that's in my life that helps me and how I can help someone today. And I love that we have these steps. And here's the 12th step, is I get to give this away. I have sponsees. Many of them I've had in my life for a while now, and Julie's one of them. I love her, and I loved your share, Julie, and thanks for showing up at short notice. And she is precious to me. And then there's Bobby, another sponsor of mine that I love and adore. And, you know, I get to give this away. I love to sponsor women. I like to share my experience, strength, and hope with them. I love to see them grow. I love to be of service. I'm still in service at meetings. I go to retreats. I've learned to still do what my sponsor tells me what to do. And I want to sometimes argue because I think I know. I've been around long enough. But I've learned to keep my mouth shut. And I get to say thank you to her. Thank you for being here for me. Thank you for giving this so freely to me. Thank you for giving me your time. Thank you for taking me through the steps. She doesn't have to do that. And that's what I get to do. But I get so much out of it, and I know those who sponsor know what I'm talking about. And even if you have 2 days, 1 day, you have something to give away. You get to go up to a newcomer, and you get to say hi and you give them your name and you give them your number, and how can I help you? How can I help you today? And that's what we get to do. So I have to close here, but what I can say is that when I started out as a newcomer, I needed a lot of attention. I needed a lot of validation. I needed you to tell me I was okay. I needed you to flirt with me. I needed so much, so much. But everyone gave it to me. People loved me. And it took a while for me to love myself. It took me a while to like who I was and to be okay with who I am, just the way I am, faults and all. And that I never stopped loving the big book and the 12 and 12 and the books that we have. I never stopped wanting to know how to do it better. But I have to remember that every day is, all I can give is what is in the present. All I can give you is what I have right now. And I'm not going to be perfect, ever. And I thought I was. If I kept doing this, I could just be perfect. And then you would all like me. But you know what? I'll continue to have faults. I'll continue to make mistakes. And I'll never be perfect because I'll need God always. And I need to depend on Him. My dependence is not on me, not on my thinking, not on my good ideas, what I think are good ideas. My dependence is on God. And I believe through the years I've learned to be more wise. I've learned to keep my mouth shut. I've learned to listen more. And I've learned to love Alcoholics Anonymous with all my heart. And I've learned how to love you. Thank you.